Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Aini and right now I would like to present my thesis proposal, and the title is Directive Illocutionary Act of all the characters in the Encanto movie. So in chapter 1, in introduction, there are 5 subbabs, and number 1 is background of the study. Number 2 is problem of the study. Number 3 is significance of the study. Number 4 is scope and limitation of the study. And the last is definition of key terms. So in my background of study is the first is communication cannot be separated in human life. However, this communication made by humans has a purpose to take an action. This speak act can be interpreted as an utterance accompanied by an action taken. This action in pragmatic studies is called by a speech act. And the second is learning about directive speech act can be done by doing research through several works such as a novel, podcast, talk show, and even film. Therefore, the action in this case has the intention to show a context, and this context will be understood by the listener to perform an action. And the third is film is an image that can move and can entertain the audience. In the film, there is also a communication that can be in the form of verbal communication and visual communication. Therefore, the researcher use film to be used as media in the research. And the fourth is many previous studies have conducted research on directive speech act using different media, including using film media. However, as far as researchers have seen, no one has tried to examine the directive speech act in the Encanto film. Therefore, in the study, the researcher want to fill the void by analyzing the directive speech act in the Encanto film. And the last is this study will reveal the types of directive speech act used by all the characters in the Encanto film using the theory form cell. And the next is problem of the study. Number 1 is what kind of directive speech act are used by the characters in the Encanto movie. And number 2 is what is the function of directive speech act performed by the characters in the Encanto movie. The next slide is significance of the study. This research is expected to explain the types of direct speech act performed by all the characters in the Encanto film. In addition, this research is also expected to convey the function of the direct speech act used by all the characters in the Encanto movie. From this result, the researcher hopes that this research can be used as an addition to previous research regarding directive speech act in film. In addition, the results of this study are also expected to help the reader in knowing the types of directive speech acts performed by all the characters in the film, and we hope that this research will be useful in developing a study that focuses on directive speech act. And then is scope and limitation of the study. The study will only focus on one of the 5 types of illocutionary act. These speech acts are directive speech act performed by all the characters in the Encanto film to limit the scope of this research. This directive speak act will be collected by the researcher from the action taken by all the characters in the film. All action taken by all characters in this film will be analyzed by researcher using the theory of self. And the next is definition of key terms. The first is speak act is an action performed through speech, and the second an illocutionary act is an action in the form of an utterance that has meaning and refers to the speakers. And the third is directive speak act is an action used by the speaker to make the listener do something according to what was said by the speaker. And the fourth is an image that can move and can entertain the audience. And the last is Encanto movie is a family movie that has magic and every member of this family. And in chapter 2 is review of related literature. There are theoretical framework and relevant theory. So in this my theoretical framework, which is about speak act, locutionary, illocutionary, and perlocutionary. And in illocutionary, there are 5 subparts. The first is representative, the second is commissive, the third is expressive, the fourth is directive, and the last is declarative. In directive, there are acts, commands, requests, invite, permit, and advice. And then is relevant theory consists of speech act, illocutionary acts that have 5 branches. There are representative, commissive, expressive, directive, and declarative. And direct to speak acts, and the last is about movie. So now we move in chapter 3 is research method. There are research design, data collection, and data analysis. So research design. In this study, the researcher will use a qualitative descriptive method. This qualitative descriptive method will focus on qualitative data which is then described. The data obtained from this qualitative descriptive study are data that can be in the form of interview transcript, notes, and observation, photos, or images that can be used to obtain data. And we move in data collection. There are research data, data source, research instrument, and data collection technique. So in the research data, in this study, the data were taken from every word, sentence, or utterance spoken by all the characters in the Encanto film. Researcher will also focus on the action taken by all the characters in the film. And data source. In this study, the researcher will use literary works in the form of film. The film used is a film entitled Encanto as a data source. Encanto movie is a film directed by Byron Howard, Jared Bass, and Caris Castro-Smith. And research instrument. In this study, the instrument that will be used to analyze or identify the data is carried out by the researcher herself. This can be called a human instrument. And the last is data collection technique. In this study, the researcher will perform several steps in collecting data. Researcher will download the film Encanto. Researcher will download the Encanto film script. Researcher will see the Encanto film and see the script of the film. Researcher will record the dialogue that show the type of directed speak act, and the last, the researcher will identify and analyze the selected data which show the directed speak act used by all the characters in the film. And the next slide is data analysis, consists of identification of the data. The researcher will identify the selected data that show the type of directed speak act in the film. Its type of speak act will be highlighted by being given a different color, such as red for ask, green for common, yellow for request, gray for the invite, blue for the permit, and purple for the advice. And classification of the data. After identifying the data, the researcher will classify them based on the type of directed speak act. In this case, the researcher will use a table to make it easier to the reader to understand it. And describing the data. After the researcher has classified and identified the data, the researcher will describe and explain the result of the data analysis. The researcher will describe the data by providing related interpretation of the type of directed speak act. And the last is concluding the research result. This study will explain the result of the research, including the type of directed speak act and the function of the type of speak acts shown by all the characters in the film. I think that's enough for my presentation, and thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.